Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack the sometimes tricky world of professional requirements. And today, we're zeroing in on something really vital for law practices. Risk management and compliance programs, or RMCPs. Specifically, how law firms, which are accountable institutions, can get a handle on these and actually make them work day to day.
And just before we jump in, we should mention this deep dive is supported by FICA Friendly. They're all about making processes simpler for legal pros.
Exactly. So our mission today, to give you a really practical, actionable understanding of RMCPs, no jargon overload, hopefully. We want to explore how your firm can sort of weave these duties into what you already do without it feeling like this huge extra weight.
Yeah, make it seamless, if possible.
Right. We know you want insights fast, things you can actually use. So let's get straight into it. First off, what is an RMCP for a law firm? And, well, why does it matter so much right now?
Okay, so the big driver here is the Financial Intelligence Center Act, FICA. It explicitly states, I think it's section 42(1), that legal practitioners listed in Schedule 1 as accountable institutions must have an RMCP. This isn't like a nice to have, it's a legal requirement. You need to develop it, write it down, keep it updated, and actually implement it. And it's specifically for managing risks related to anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, and proliferation financing.
Okay, so definitely not optional, like legal must do. And what's the core idea behind making law firms do this?
Well, FICA itself says the whole point is to help firms identify, assess, monitor, mitigate, and manage the risk that the services you provide might somehow involve or, facilitate these kinds of illegal activities. Think about it, the money flows, the sensitive client info. These are areas where, unfortunately, vulnerabilities can pop up.
Right, it's about protecting the financial system's integrity, stopping bad actors from exploiting legal services. And I gather if you don't take this seriously, the consequences aren't trivial. Oh, absolutely not. While we don't have specific penalty figures in front of us today, the sources make it clear non-compliance can lead to, significant administrative sanctions, and in serious situations, potentially even criminal charges under FICA. Section 42 really lays down the law on needing these risk frameworks. You just can't afford to be sloppy.
Okay, point taken. Very important. So let's get practical then. What are the core pieces of an RMCP that a law firm really needs to focus on? Thinking about day-to-day operations based on FICA and the kind of process our expert team uses for building these custom programs.
Right. Well, number one has to be client due diligence, CDD. And this is much more than just getting a name. FICA sections 21, 21A, B, and C detail this. You need to identify your client, yes, but also really understand the nature of the relationship, the purpose of the work you're doing for them, and importantly, the source of the funds involved.
Makes sense. The who, the why, and the where the money's from. What about trickier situations like dealing with companies or trusts? How does CDD work there?
That's a really key area. For entities like companies, trusts, partnerships, you're legally required to dig deeper and identify the beneficial owners. These are the actual individuals, the people who ultimately own or control that entity and its assets. FICA section 20A is super direct on this too. It says you just cannot start a business relationship or do a single transaction with an anonymous client or someone using an obviously fake name. Transparency is crucial.
Right. No hiding behind corporate veils.
Yeah.
Okay, so identification is key. What's the next essential building block for a practical RMCP?
That would have to be risk assessment. And this links right back to that core purpose we talked about from FICA section 42B. Law firms need a system, a process to figure out first, is this person a potential client or an existing one, that's section 42B? And then, crucially, evaluate the risks tied to that specific client and the services you're offering. What kind of law are they asking for? What industry are they in? Questions like that really shape the risk picture.
So you need a way to flag potential high-risk areas from the get-go, and I guess throughout the relationship too, which implies this isn't just a check you do once at the beginning.
Exactly, precisely. CDD is definitely not a one and done thing. Ongoing monitoring is absolutely critical. FICA section 42J even points this out. It says you need to perform CDD if you suspect something fishy during an established relationship. So you need internal processes to keep an eye on transactions, client behavior, looking for those red flags continuously.
Okay, and if those red flags do top up, if a client or situation seems higher risk, what then?
That's where enhanced due diligence, or EDD, kicks in. Based on the processes our expert team develops for these RMCPs, EDD gets triggered for clients flagged as high risk. This means taking extra steps, more rigorous checks to verify who they are and where their money is coming from. Often, our process includes needing a documented justification, like an override sheet explaining why the EDD steps were needed or perhaps why certain risks were accepted. And these EDD files, they absolutely must be kept available for inspections.
Got it. A deeper dive, more proof, more paperwork for higher risk cases. Now, I've also heard about looking beyond just the client themselves.
You have, and that's right. A really practical step our team incorporates is doing adverse media searches. It's basically using online search tools, Google, news archives, whatever, looking for the client's name linked with terms that might signal trouble. Things like fraud, arrest, investigation, okay? If you find something worrying, the process dictates you pause onboarding, review it carefully. It's about being proactive, finding risks that might not show up in standard ID checks.
Seems like a smart move in today's world with so much information out there. What about inside the firm? The staff themselves, are there compliance steps for them too?
Yes, definitely. Our process typically includes an annual requirement to screen staff who deal directly with clients or are involved in the CDD process itself. Usually this involves getting them to complete a declaration about being a politically exposed person, PEP, or having conflicts of interest when they're hired, and then each year rescreening them against PP lists and sanctions lists. The results usually go into their HR file.
Right, ensure the people doing the checking are also compliant. Makes sense. Okay, what if a client pushes back, refuses to give information, or maybe the EDD process just hits a wall?
Yeah, that's a critical point. If a client, especially one you've already tagged as high risk, won't provide the info, or the info they give is dodgy or incomplete, the established process we use says it must be escalated, usually to the firm's designated compliance officer. Now, depending on the risk level and what exactly happened, the firm might have to refuse the work, or if it's an existing client, maybe even, offboard them. And crucially, you have to seriously consider filing a suspicious transaction report, an STR, with the Financial Intelligence Center. Plus, you need to carefully document why you refused or ended the relationship.
Okay, so clear steps for dealing with non-cooperation. All this activity, the checks, the EDD, the refusals must generate a lot of paperwork or digital trails. How long do firms need to hang on to all this?
Good question. FICA Section 23 is clear on this. Firms need to keep records relating to business relationships and transactions for at least 5 years. And that's 5 years from when the relationship ends or the specific transaction is finished. And worth noting, Section 24 explicitly allows keeping these records electronically, which, let's face it, is pretty essential for managing it all efficiently.
Definitely. Electronic records are key. Okay, last piece on the core elements. How do you make sure everyone in the firm actually knows this stuff and follows the rules?
Training and compliance monitoring, absolutely vital. FICA Section 43 actually mandates training for employees on their duties under the Act. And the approach our team takes also emphasizes having a way to track when steps get missed. We often suggest something like a breach register. If someone skips a required check, it gets logged, they get retrained, if it keeps happening. Then it needs to escalate, probably to HR, to ensure people are held accountable and the firm's processes stay robust.
Okay, so we've laid out the key pieces of the puzzle. Now, the big question, probably what many listeners are thinking, how does a busy law firm take all this CDD, risk assessment, monitoring, EDD, record keeping, and actually integrate it smoothly without it feeling like this massive, separate administrative nightmare? What's the natural way?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the key is embedding these things into your existing workflows as, organically as possible. Take client due diligence. It shouldn't feel like some totally alien process. Think of it as enhancing your current client intake or onboarding. You're already collecting client details, right? This is about making sure you're also getting those specific FICA-required data points and, crucially, verifying them properly.
Okay, so building upon existing steps, not necessarily inventing whole new ones from scratch.
Exactly. And like we mentioned, those adverse media searches, that can just become a standard part of your initial client research before you even agree to take them on. Same with staff screening. Line it up with your normal annual HR review cycles. It becomes part of the routine. The feedback we get, and certainly the way our expert team approaches it, is that a good RMCP isn't a one-size-fits-all document gathering dust. It has to be customized, tailored to how your specific firm operates. That's how it becomes an effective tool, not just a burden.
That makes a lot of sense. Integration and customization seem key to making it work without grinding everything to a halt. Okay, as we start to pull this together, what are the absolute must-remember takeaways for our listeners about RMCPs and their law firms?
Okay, first and foremost, this isn't optional. Compliance with FICA on RMCPs is a legal duty for legal practitioners acting as accountable institutions. Full stop. Second, a practical RMCP boils down to Really knowing your clients, assessing the risks properly, keeping a watchful eye through ongoing monitoring, and of course, keeping good records. Third, and maybe most importantly for day-to-day sanity, integrating these tasks smoothly into how you already work is absolutely crucial for it to be effective and efficient. And finally, don't forget, ignoring this stuff comes with real risks. Significant penalties are a genuine possibility.
That's a great summary. Clear, actionable points. This has been incredibly helpful, really demystifying a complex area. And again, a big thank you to FICA Friendly for supporting this deep dive.
My pleasure. Happy to shed some light on it.
Now, for all you law firms listening in, FICA Friendly is offering something pretty great. A free 10-minute FICA Risk Compliance Check, specifically for your practice. It's a really good chance to get a quick expert look at where you stand, no strings attached. To plan your free session, just click the link you'll find right there in the description of this deep dive.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward way to just, take that proactive step, check your bases.
Absolutely. And as a final thought for you to take away this week, think about how actively managing your firm's FICA risk isn't just about avoiding penalties. How could it also strengthen your firm's reputation and play a part in building a more secure financial system for everyone? Definitely something worth considering. Thanks so much for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.